David Busst. On April 8, 1996, the sun shone deceptively over Old Trafford, the stadium, a stage for theatrical triumphs and last-gasp heroics, was about to become a scene of tragedy. 2 minutes into a Premier League match between Manchester United and Coventry, a corner kick arced into the box. David Busst, a solid but unheralded defender, ventured forward, his eyes on the ball. He became entangled with United's Dennis Irwin and Brian McClair in what seemed like a routine clash, but it was anything but. The collective silence of 50,000 fans was a premonition. Bust's right leg, a limb built for power and stability, gave way with a sound that witnesses described as a crack of lightning in a silent storm. The resulting injury was a horrific compound fracture of both the tibia and fibula. The bone didn't just break, it burst through the skin, a jagged ivory spear against the green of the pitch. The sight was so ghastly that it brought the universe to a halt. The match was not merely halted, it was suspended in a state of shock for 9 full minutes. Players who had just been in fierce combat now stood frozen, some turning away, others holding their heads in disbelief. Manchester United's goalkeeper, Petr Čech, was so profoundly shaken by the sight that he reportedly vomited on the turf. The grounds crew, in a surreal act of sanitisation, had to use sand to cover the blood-stained grass, a grim ritual that looked more like a forensic clean-up than a pitch repair. The ball, a symbol of joy, sat next to the sand pile like a forgotten toy at a tragedy site. This was a tragic accident, a collision of limbs and bad luck, not a malicious foul. But the true horror was yet to come. While in the hospital, Busst contracted a severe MRSA infection. The doctor's fear wasn't about recovery, it was about survival. The infection created the very real risk of his leg needing to be amputated. The infection, rather than the initial break, ultimately ended his career. The aftermath of that single, shocking moment rippled far beyond the confines of the football pitch. Schmeichel later admitted that the image of Bust's leg haunted him, giving him nightmares. It was a stark reminder of the fragile line between glory and tragedy. Busst, despite undergoing 22 operations, never played professionally again, officially retiring just 7 months after the incident. The Premier League banned replays of such graphic injuries during live broadcasts as a direct result of the shock and trauma caused by this event. Bust's story became a quiet catalyst for change. Petr Cech. On October 14th, 2006, Chelsea goalkeeper Petr Cech's life and career were forever altered in a match against Reading. The game was just another Saturday afternoon of Premier League action. Then, Cech rushed off his line to collect a loose ball. In a split second of chaotic, brutal timing, he collided with Reading midfielder Stephen Hunt, who had rushed in to challenge. The impact was a brutal knee-to-head blow that left Cech with a depressed skull fracture. The silence that fell over the stadium was absolute. The sight of Cech, a giant of a man, motionless on the ground, was a jolt of reality for every fan, player, and medic. The sound of his skull fracturing, a dull thud against the roar of the crowd, was a personal horror. He was immediately taken off the field and rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. Doctors later confirmed that the injury was life-threatening. They stated that Cech would have died had he arrived at the hospital any later. His life was saved by a matter of minutes, a fact so absurdly close to a different outcome that it felt like a twist of fate, an almost cosmic intervention. Cech's recovery took 3 months, and when he returned to the field, he did so with the now famous protective helmet. The helmet, which became his permanent trademark, was a necessary precaution, a compromise with mortality. Doctors had warned him that another severe head injury could be fatal. His injury was a pivotal moment in English football, leading to a complete review and change of concussion and medical protocols across the league. In a strange paradox, a single moment of catastrophic injury was the genesis of a safer sport. Despite the profound trauma, Cech went on to have a legendary career, winning numerous titles and proving that he could return to the highest level of the game while prioritising his safety. His story is not just one of resilience, but of a quiet heroism, a man who stared down mortality and came back stronger. Ryan Mason. On January 22nd, 2017, Hull City midfielder Ryan Mason, in a desperate attempt to defend a corner, suffered a horrific head injury in a clash with Chelsea's Gary Cahill during a Premier League match. The head-to-head collision was so violent it resulted in a fractured skull. Mason immediately collapsed, his body a lifeless heap on the ground. He was rushed to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery to stop internal bleeding. The surgery was a success, but the injury was so severe that doctors warned him he would not survive another similar impact. At the age of 26, Mason was forced to retire from professional football, his dreams of a long career cut short by a single, brutal moment. But his journey was far from over. Instead of leaving the sport, he dedicated himself to coaching, rising through the ranks at Tottenham Hotspur, his boyhood club. In a remarkable turn of events, he became the youngest interim head coach in Premier League history at the age of 29, a man who traded his boots for a clipboard, his dreams of playing for a new purpose in the dugout. Mason is now a vocal advocate for improved concussion protocols and player safety, using his own experience to protect the next generation of athletes. His story is a poignant one of professional rebirth, a beautiful juxtaposition of a career ending, and a new one beginning in the most unexpected of ways. Santi Cazorla. Santi Cazorla, the diminutive Spanish midfielder, played with a joyful, almost mischievous quality. But in the background of his magical performances for Arsenal, a silent, insidious horror was growing. An injury sustained in 2013, which seemed at first to be a simple knock, became a medical nightmare. It was not a collision, but a slow, creeping rot that was eating him from the inside. A virulent bacterial infection had taken hold, a predator that feasted on his body, slowly devouring 8 centimetres of his Achilles tendon. The aftermath was a brutal, years-long struggle that took place not on the pitch, but in sterile, white operating rooms. The elegant midfielder had to endure 8 surgeries on his ankle. Doctors, in a gruesome and bizarre act of medical craftsmanship, had to use skin from his forearm, a tattooed section featuring his daughter's name, to repair the damage. The absurdity of it all was profound. A man's career was being stitched back together with skin from his own arm, his family's name literally a part of his physical reconstruction. Cazorla's story is a terrifying tale of what happens when a simple injury becomes a life-altering medical crisis. For years, he was told he might never walk again. He was a man consumed by an invisible enemy, a career on the brink of collapse. Yet, in a testament to his indomitable spirit, he not only walked, but he ran again, returning to the pitch for Villarreal in a comeback that was a miraculous act of defiance. His story is a chilling reminder of the hidden dangers that lurk in the shadows of professional sport. Eduardo da Silva. In the 2007-8 season, Arsenal was poised for a Premier League title with the fluid artistry of a young squad. They played with a joyful innocence, and their key player was Eduardo da Silva, a striker who moved with a dancer's grace. But a match against Birmingham City on February 23, 2008, brought their soaring narrative down to earth. In the 3rd minute of the game, Eduardo received the ball near the touchline. Birmingham defender Martin Taylor launched into a tackle. The collision was a sickening, bone-on-bone thud that reverberated through the stadium. The result was a broken fibula and a dislocated ankle in Eduardo's left leg. The sight was so graphic that Sky Sports, which was broadcasting the game live, chose not to show replays. The decision was an acknowledgement of a moment that transcended sport. It was an act of public mercy. The event had a devastating emotional effect on the Arsenal squad. Many players were visibly shaken, turning their heads, covering their mouths in horror. The team's captain, William Gallas, a man of fierce resolve, was openly crying, his face a mask of anguish. It wasn't a game anymore. It was an outpouring of shared trauma. While Taylor received a red card, the cost to Arsenal was far greater. Their season, a beautiful, fragile tapestry of ambition, unravelled in the wake of the incident. The title challenge, once so full of promise, faded into a distant memory, replaced by a profound sense of loss. Eduardo, a player of immense promise and quiet brilliance, spent a year in rehabilitation. He returned to play, but as a ghost of his former self, a man who had to relearn how to trust his body, his mind, and the cruel unpredictability of the sport. His story is a chilling reminder of how a single tackle can destroy not just a limb, but a team's spirit and a player's confidence. He never fully regained the form and confidence he had before the injury, a professional life cleaved in two by a single tragic moment. Aaron Ramsey and Ryan Shawcross. On February 27, 2010, Arsenal's 19-year-old midfielder Aaron Ramsey, a player of immense grace and technical ability, suffered a broken tibia and fibula during a match against Stoke City. The injury was the result of a late and aggressive tackle by Stoke's Ryan Shawcross. The sound of the leg snapping was reportedly audible over the crowd, a chilling and unnatural sound that cut through the cheers. It was the sound of a dream shattering. Ramsey's teammates were horrified, their faces a mix of anger and shock. Even Shawcross, the perpetrator, was visibly distressed, his red card a small, inadequate punishment for the damage he had inflicted. The incident sparked a fierce debate about the physicality of English football. Ramsey's career was put on hold as he underwent a long and difficult rehabilitation, but his return was a remarkable story of defiance and triumph. He came back a stronger, more complete player, his game infused with a new, quiet determination. The narrative of his comeback became intertwined with the tragic fate of Ryan Shawcross, who later retired quietly with a back injury. The very player who had ended Ramsey's season found his own career ending in a similar quiet decline. Ramsey's story is a powerful illustration of a player who turned a career-threatening setback into a catalyst for extraordinary success, while his opponent became a footnote in the very story he helped create. It was a vicious circle of fate, a poetic but brutal lesson in the karmic nature of the game. Alan Smith. On February 18, 2006, in an FA Cup match against Liverpool, Manchester United midfielder Alan Smith faced a free kick. He did what any professional footballer would do. He jumped to block the shot. What happened next was a horrifying twist of fate. He landed awkwardly on his left leg, which had borne the full weight of his body. The sound was not a crack, but a collective gasp from the crowd, a silent scream of thousands of people who witnessed the bone snap. Smith's leg was broken, his ankle dislocated. The image of the limb, bent at an impossible angle, was a moment of pure, unadulterated horror. The pitch was immediately a scene of chaos and dread. Players from both sides put aside their differences to show their concern. Xabi Alonso, the Liverpool player who had taken the free kick, was visibly distraught. The sight was so graphic that Manchester United's legendary manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, described it as one of the worst injuries he had ever witnessed. It wasn't a malicious foul or a moment of recklessness. It was just a moment of bad luck, a brutal, bone-on-bone reality. Smith was out of action for 7 months. His season derailed. He returned to play, but he never fully regained his explosive speed or his powerful stride. The injury, like an invisible weight, held him back, a constant reminder of the day his career was fundamentally altered. While he continued to play for several more years, the incident became the defining moment of his career, a what-if story of a promising player who was undone by a simple, terrible accident. His story is a poignant testament to the fragility of a professional athlete's body and the fine line between glory and tragedy. Djibril Cisse. Djibril Cisse's career is a remarkable tale of resilience, defined by 2 horrific leg breaks. The first occurred in 2004 while playing for Liverpool. In a seemingly routine play, with no opponent in sight, his foot simply caught in the turf, a banal detail that set in motion a devastating chain of events. His leg bent backward with a sickening snap, a double fracture so severe that had it not been for a quick-thinking doctor who reset the bone on the field, he could have faced amputation. The surreal contrast of his vibrant personality with the brutal horror of his injury was a shocking juxtaposition. Against all odds, Cisse made a remarkable recovery, returning to the pitch and even playing a part in Liverpool's Champions League victory in 2005. Just 2 years later, in 2006, in a moment of unimaginable cruelty, Cisse suffered a second, similarly devastating fracture to his other leg during a friendly match for France. This time, the injury occurred just before the World Cup, the pinnacle of a player's career, forcing him to miss the tournament. For most players, one such injury would be a career ender. 2 would be unimaginable. Yet, Cisse, with unwavering determination, recovered again. His spirit seemed forged in the fire of these traumas. He continued to play for numerous clubs across Europe and never lost his passion or his flair for the game. His ability to overcome such severe physical setbacks twice stands as a testament to his indomitable spirit. A man who, like a phoenix, rose from the ashes of his own body. He was a man who lived to play, even if it meant risking everything. Santiago Cañizares, not every career-altering injury happens on the field under the roar of a crowd. For Spanish goalkeeper Santiago Cañizares, his fate was sealed by a bizarre and absurd accident in the quiet solitude of his bathroom. In 2002, as Spain's starting goalkeeper for the upcoming World Cup, Cañizares accidentally dropped a glass bottle of aftershave. The clean glass bottle shattered on the tile floor. A single, unseen shard of glass severed a tendon in his toe. The clean slice, so small and insignificant, was a career-altering blow that forced him to withdraw from the tournament. The absurdity of the moment was profound. A man whose career was built on facing down 100-mile-per-hour shots was taken out by a bottle of fragrance. The mundane had dealt a blow that no professional athlete could have imagined. His injury, a moment of profound, almost comical unluckiness, opened the door for a young, untested goalkeeper named Iker Casillas. Casillas, who would have been a backup, was thrust into the starting role and went on to become a national hero. Casillas would later become one of the most decorated goalkeepers in history. Cañizares is forever linked to this bizarre moment that paved the way for his successor's legendary career. A glass bottle, a common aftershave, a singular act of bad luck, and a legacy was born. Luc Nilis. Luc Nilis arrived at Aston Villa in 2000 as a highly touted Belgian striker. He had a stellar reputation, having formed a lethal partnership with Ronaldo at PSV Eindhoven. Nillis started his career at Villa in excellent form, scoring in his first 2 league games. But in his third game, against Ipswich Town, a singular, ordinary challenge with goalkeeper Richard Wright brought his career to a shocking and abrupt end. Nillis suffered a double compound fracture to his right shin. The sound was an awful, sickening crack. The injury was so severe that players from both teams recoiled in horror, their shouts of encouragement turning into gasps of fear. At one point, there were fears that his leg would have to be amputated due to infection. His career, which had just begun in England, was over. Luc Nilis became a tragic footnote in Premier League history. A great talent whose story was a case of what if and what could have been. His name, unlike others with similar injuries, is often forgotten. A sad testament to the swift and unforgiving nature of the sport. His legacy wasn't one of triumph, but one of a great talent who slipped into obscurity, a forgotten legend whose career was stolen by a moment of bad luck.